All right, you're back with the Italian Sports Guys.
Benvenuti, Craigie boy.
Benvenuti, Kyle, and we look ahead to next season for LSU, and then we'll jump to the Saints and look ahead to the NFL playoffs as well. But for the Tigers, of course, Kyle, you can say they're breaking up the band. Going to lose a lot of guys. We know as well that we're going to lose a defensive coordinator and our offensive passing guy in Joe Brady. So a lot of a different look for this team next year.
Certainly, and that's what happens when you win it all.
That's right.
A lot of times players are in the spotlight for a few extra games. They get noticed by some NFL scouts. Maybe an agent gets in their ear, or maybe somebody gets in their ear. And also, these are the best players in the country.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be a junior, you shouldn't feel like you have to stay out of obligation.
That's right. And when you win it all, you figure can't get no better than this, right?
They don't get no better than this, Craigie boy. But I will say kudos and thanks to Dave Aranda for congratulations to him on getting the job as head coach at the University of Baylor.
Yeah.
So there's your defensive coordinator gone.
Yeah.
So the LSU safeties coach is a guy named Bill Bush who Aranda brought in last year to be the safeties coach at LSU, which many think that he's going to go and be Aranda's defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So let's assume that you're going to lose him. They lost the tight ends coach who was going to coach at Old Dominion now. He was a graduate assistant, but he was coaching tight ends.
Right.
And then, of course, Joe Brady going to the Carolina Panthers. I saw a blip today where they weren't sure if Steve Ensminger was going to retire or not, and I sure hope not because Ensminger has a playbook now that is second to none, and he can sure as hell pull a trigger on a Saturday.
Right.
The Joe Brady, the guy behind Joe Brady, a guy to his right up in the booth when they showed him on television, is a guy named George Munoz. He was an offensive coordinator at one point at the University of Louisiana Lafayette. Very sharp young coach. And to talk about his connection to quarterbacks and his relationship to Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow had him sitting in the front row with his family and Coach Ogeron for the Heisman Trophy presentation. So that tells you the connection he had with the quarterback. Many think that he would move into Joe Brady's role as the passing game coordinator.
As long as you don't think that he's in over his head, I think you want to keep as much continuity as you can. Obviously, when you lose that many guys.
Yeah, one of the things that people don't talk about a whole lot is what Joe Brady did right when he got there. His official position was wide receiver coach, passing game coordinator. Now, Mickey Joseph is a receivers coach as well, but Joe Brady took it to another level from a drill standpoint.
Yeah.
He had him catching balls with those glasses that covered the outside of your eyes, so you couldn't take your eye off the ball and hit you in the face. So that hurts, trust me.
Focus and finish, right?
Yeah, right. Just a lot of the things he did from a fundamental and mental standpoint truly changed the complexion of the wide receiver room at LSU, and obviously the rest is history.
Yeah.
So I think that if that's the case and Bill Bush does not move up the coordinator and goes with Aranda to Baylor, LSU can pay more. Keep that in mind.
Right.
Corey Raymond gets a legit shot. He's LSU's secondary coach for the last several years. He's interviewed for some other defensive coordinator spots, but he's never gotten an offer.
There's some good spots on the defensive side.
There's some more good spots on the East Coast.
That's right.
And I think one of the places he interviewed was Florida State with Willie Taggart. But so a lot of people say, hey, it's his time, let's see. But, you're in a position where you don't have to do trial and error. You can make a decision on somebody big time. LSU's proven they're going to pay assistants as much or more than anybody in the country. Yeah. And they've also proven that you come here and you're going to be in the spotlight and get a shot. Yeah. Because the defensive coordinator is the head coach now, and the passing game coordinator in the college team is an NFL offensive coordinator.
Right.
Okay. So two names that come to mind for me. This is not any real inside scoop I have, but when we hired Aranda back in 2016, two guys. One guy that we really looked at was at the time he was at Penn State, Bob Shoop. Now he ends up at Mississippi State as a defensive coordinator there. Michigan is making a play for him as we speak. I'm not so sure that LSU might not try and do the same.
Yeah.
Also, Jim Leonard, who, as ironic as it is, actually succeeded Dave Aranda at Wisconsin. Jim Leonard played safety for the Super Bowl Ravens and for the New York Jets for a while, and I think went to camp with the Saints before he before he retired with Rob Ryan, because he played for his brother Rex.
Right.
It's defense at Baltimore and with the Jets. Jim Leonard is one of the hot names in coaching. DC at Wisconsin. So if LSU is not going to promote Corey Raymond or Bill Bush is not going to be here to take that job, I think you absolutely have to find a way to interview Jim Leonard from Wisconsin. That would be my first choice. again, this is all hot off the press stuff. So
Yeah, what about on the personnel side? Obviously, no bigger loss than at quarterback, but a lot of other guys we're going to lose too, as you mentioned, because they're juniors moving to the NFL or whatever.
yeah, and we'll focus on that. I mean, we all know who the seniors are. LSU kind of prepares for that even as you're going through a season. Right. Okay, this kid's a senior. Joe Burrow's gone.
Right.
So you got to get Miles Brennan ready, and he walks in as the guy with the first chance to take this job, and I think he'll do a great job. Kid can absolutely spin it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, don't expect him to be Joe Burrow, please. Give the kid a chance to do his own thing. Let's go with the juniors who are leaving early, Craig, and my hot list right here. Grant Delpit is leaving, which we all knew. He's projected. Preseason was a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
I think now he's going to go towards the middle, maybe even slide to the later end of the first round. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who had a tremendous season, tremendous young man, really struggled with it because he loves LSU. He's a Baton Rouge kid, man. Loves being a college student. But he declared for the draft today, and Mike DeTillier has him rated as probably a second-round pick, Darren Sproles type of player. Yeah. Justin Jefferson, the all-everything wide receiver from Destrehan High School, was a 2- or 3-star receiver out of high school.
Wow, yeah.
And he'll end up being a first-round pick in the NFL. Kid, yeah. Runs great routes, great with the ball in his hands after the catch, and a pretty gutsy receiver.
Good at high-pointing the ball as well, another NFL skill you need.
He's a natural.
Yeah.
Lloyd Cushenberry, this was a kid who, again, was a 3-star. A lot of people fussed when we offered him. LSU last-minuted this kid, if that's a term, and pulled him away from Mississippi State and Dan Mullen at the time, and signed him to be a center. And he turned out to wear the coveted number 18 for the offense and was a tremendous leader. He's a be the first one to tell you he's the most boring person in the world. He does schoolwork and football work, and that's it. Of course, you love to have him on your team. He declared for the draft as well. He graduated, walked across the stage with my daughter on December 20th, as did Joe Burrow and the Fulton brothers. Sadiq Charles, the starting left tackle, who had was coach's decision, suspended for some of the games this year, but he declared for the draft today. He had a tremendous, most improved players on the team were he and Austin Deculus, aside from Joe Burrow, the 2 tackles. Sadiq Charles declared today, and he's gone. Both inside linebackers, Jacob Phillips and Patrick Queen, both declared. Patrick Queen
had
really
a big game Monday night, no doubt about it.
Really came into his own in the second half of the season. Always knew he was a guy who could really, really run, but the more they showed him on camera, if you sit on the bench when the offense is on the field, he said, this guy's got some size to him. He started to mold into a mini Devin White, and they said if he would have come back, he would have been Devin White 2.0 next year. He'd have been that good. Don't know about Caleb Von Chason, who many thought was a lock to go, and I think he missed some games with injury, but this kid's all everything, 250 pounds of nothing but muscle, who can run and is a real good football player. Yeah. But he hasn't announced yet. Maybe he wants to get one more year because the grades are coming back second round. They want to maybe see if he can stay healthy or whatever. And if he comes back, and again, I think he's a top 5 pick next year. And also Thaddeus Moss, we talked about. We weren't really sure. He's a sophomore, but he's been in college his 4th year in college.
We'll see. I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, probably doesn't need the money with his dad. Is very successful, of course, Hall of Famer.
Right, and you had a great point, too. Is he going to ever put up these kind of numbers again? Look, this is an offense that LSU is going to go into next year running again. Yeah. They're going to score a lot of points. They're going to get a lot of yards. I'm not saying they're going to do what they did this year. It'd be impossible to expect that, but they're going to be prolific again next year. Mark my words here. So we start looking at the depth chart and who's going to replace who or whatever. And real quick hitters right here, Craig. With Delpit gone, Jacoby Stevens is staying, but I think he'll be playing closer to the line of scrimmage a lot more. So Delpit gone, Maurice Hampton's going to move into that spot more than likely. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is gone. So Terrion Davis-Price, John Emery, Chris Curry, no surprise there. Lloyd Cushenberry, the center we talked about, that's the one that really bothered me because he was just a college-type guy. Yeah. I really wish he would have come back for one more year, but I understand certainly he's already graduated. 2 guys that are going to be fighting for his spot. Charles Turner, who's technique-wise very, very good, but he's about 270 pounds. Yeah. So he's a freshman. If he can't put on that 25 pounds this year, then there's your problem. Chasen Hines is a guy who actually played a lot at guard last year when somebody went down as a freshman. I thought he was fantastic. End up not being able to hold onto the spot this year because of some injuries in training camp. He can play center as well. With Jacob Phillips and Patrick Queen leaving, your 2 inside linebackers going into it, at least into the spring, will be Damon Clark from Southern Lab in Baton Rouge and Michael Baskerville, who's a kid from Evangel that had some really big spots. A great game against Vanderbilt. Justin Jefferson, I think, kind of assume that he's the slot, although they all move around all over the place. You're going to have Jamar Chase and Terrace Marshall back. Trey Palmer is the guy. He's out of Kentwood. He returned a punt for a touchdown this year. That's my call. Also watch Devontae Smith from A-Meet. And don't sleep on Coy Moore and Kayvon Boutte, the two freshmen that are coming in.
Yeah.
And then Sadiq Charles, the left tackle. Again, one of the most improved players in the whole program going. Look for Anthony Bradford, freshman from Michigan, of all places, who was big-time recruit, and they were able, I believe, to redshirt him this year to take that spot. Or Adair Rosenthal, a 6'7", 351-pound guy. They moved him to both sides of the ball. I think he put himself in a transfer portal, but I believe he's come back to the team, or will come back to the team, and he's going to be somebody that's going to be fighting for that spot as well. So that's the quick hit. And if Chase On leaves, you're going to have Marcel Brooks fill that spot at the outside linebacker. Thaddeus Moss, if he leaves, Eric Gilbert is the highest rated tight end ever by a scouting service, and highest rated tight end that LSU has ever recruited is coming in as a freshman, and he will play. Yeah. Whether Moss is there or not, he'll play some.
Gotcha. So I think, again, Coach O is good at restocking the cupboard on this team, and there'll be some transition. Some guys go through a learning curve. Obviously, tough to replicate what we did this season, but I think the outlook is bright still for those Tigers.
You got a little bit of house money now. We're not Alabama, where if you don't, and it's not a knock on Alabama, they're a dynastic program. Yeah. But if they don't win it all, I mean, they looked at last year as a debacle and a real problem.
Right.
And they lost in the championship game.
Right.
Okay? But there's no professional basketball team in Alabama. There's no professional the Alabama salary cap's high, but there's no professional football team in Alabama. It's all in or that's it.
Yeah.
And so we're here. It's an incredible thing. It's an incredible moment. And look, LSU probably won't go 15-0 next year, but they're damn well going to try. And don't tell that to Coach Ogeron and his team. And they're going to be a very good football team again.
But obviously, the goal, of course, is to be at that level of a Clemson or an Alabama, where it's not just a one-season wonder, but where you can compete at that level consistently over a period of time. So we'll see how it goes next year.
Absolutely.
I just want to mention real quick, there've been skeptics all year about Joe Burrow. I think after this game, there's just nobody left for him to beat. So I think the skeptics are going away. But I pointed out, I started writing down reasons why I think he will succeed in the NFL. And I wrote down 9 different things, I think, attributes that will serve him well as he moves forward. Pre-game preparation. This kid loves watching film. They say he's a film junkie. Not everybody in college puts in that kind of preparation when you get to the NFL. You can't do it just on talent alone and when you get to the NFL.
Right.
Pre-snap recognition, understanding what's going on, the movement, what that means to what he's got to do offensively. Reading his cues, we talked about that. The safeties, the middle linebackers. They pointed out very well on the broadcast last week that that middle linebacker was cheating on those underneath slant, those quick slant patterns. So a couple times when they finally saw that, Joe Burrow tucked it down, ran it 5, 10, 15 yards, and finally he had that guy in a no-win situation. If he came to cover him, he threw that quick slant. If he jumped the slant, then he took off with the football. Decisiveness, again, once he knows where to go, from the time he makes that decision, getting it out of his hands, very impressive. The decisiveness and the quickness in getting the ball out of his hands. Throwing into tight windows, again, he's just so accurate this season. There was not always big windows to throw into on some of these quick slants. I mentioned to you before the show, there was one touchdown he threw, I believe, to Jamar Chase this year in the end zone against Northwestern, I think it was. The receiver was just blanketed. I don't know how it got through the defensive back. He kind of swatted at the ball. I don't know if it went over or under his hand, but just didn't look like there was any room there, any space. He threw it to touchdown anyway. Throwing guys open. You're not always going to be open in the NFL. You have to understand where you can throw the ball, where the guy can turn and make a play on the ball.
Right.
He throws a very catchable ball. I mean, especially in those long passes, a very soft ball to catch. His pocket presence and his movement while protecting the ball. I mean, he didn't make a lot of turnovers in scrambling around. Here's a stat for you. He got hit 62 times this year, but only gave up 16 sacks. It tells you he has that kind of a sense like a Fran Tarkington or a Russell Wilson in the modern day, again, where he senses when the pocket's breaking down and can make things happen, and he looks to throw first when he's scrambling. And number 9...
He keeps his eyes downfield.
That's right, keeps his eyes downfield. And number 9, the toughness. Again, we talked about it at the end of the half, getting that shot and coming back and winning the football game.
It was evident when they talked about him early last year. It wasn't blatantly obvious, but if you looked hard enough, you could say, this kid's pretty tough. He got beat up a couple of games last year. Case in point, Florida on the road. He had no time to throw the ball. And then Alabama beat the snot out of him in Tiger Stadium last year. And he never wavered. He never complained. Yeah. He never got gun shy, never got happy feet. He kept on playing. Yeah. And for him, it is truly a linebacker's mentality in a quarterback. That's part of his makeup, is not only am I not going to let you hurt me? I sure as hell am not going to show it if it does affect me, because he understands the position. He's a football player. He's a coach's son. He understands all this stuff, okay? Yeah. His older brothers played at Nebraska. His dad played it. He understands what all that does to the huddle when you hang your head and all those things.
That's right, yeah.
And Miles Brennan sent a great tweet to him after he won the Heisman saying something to the effect of, "Congratulations, nothing but love for Joe Burrow. Thank you so much for showing me what it means to really be a quarterback." Yeah. You know, those are things that kid is going to take with him wherever he goes.
Yeah, we'll talk more in depth about that when we come to draft time back in April and May. But let's jump ahead to the NFL and to this. You'll be at the Senior Bowl, of course, checking out some players, some prospects. We talked a little bit last week about the Saints' needs in the offseason. A 2 wide receiver before Michael Thomas. We talked about offensive guard, some rushers, edge rushers for defense, maybe a safety to replace the guys we may lose, and maybe a linebacker help outside of DeMario Davis. What are you seeing, guys, you might be looking for at the Senior Bowl that might fit into the Saints' plans?
You know, I don't think we desperately need a linebacker because I like the way A.J. Klein played this year. But Alex Anzalone's always a question mark. So I want another linebacker who's a younger DeMario Davis kind of guy.
Yeah, right.
A guy who's all over the place. Malik Harrison's a guy out of Ohio State. He's a kid who can move, a kid who can run. I don't know if he's that big of the hitter that DeMario Davis is or even Klein is, but not many are. So that's a guy I'm going to kind of really keep an eye on. And then the underclassmen, I know we're talking Senior Bowl, but there's an underclassman who will not be there. Murray, the Murray kid from Oklahoma, is a guy who I really, really liked watching him play this year, and he did have a ton of help around him. Yeah. Those are two guys I'm really going to keep an eye on from the linebacker standpoint. I think LSU needs a mauler at offensive guard. I think Andrews Pete, the Saints need a mauler at guard, somebody who brings some real tenacity and toughness. Ben Bredeson out of Michigan is a guy I'll be watching. LSU's very own Damian Lewis is a senior. He's a kid whose arms look like most people's thighs. He's just giant. And I don't know how his pass blocking is, how it translates. I know he's very good at LSU, but how does it really translate to the NFL to that level? Will it knock him down some? Offensive guards don't go very often in the first round. That bodes well for the Saints. Right, so that's a guy I'm going to keep an eye on as well. And then wide receivers. We talked ad nauseum about needing a number 2, and we are in the right draft to find one. I really like the Devin Duvernay kid out of Texas. He scorched LSU, and he scorched a lot of other teams too. I can't tell you if he's a super big guy or super fast guy. I know he's fearless. He catches everything thrown near him, and he runs like hell after he catches the ball. Tough to bring down. A Jamar Chase type guy, I guess, you know. And then KJ Hill, very, very raw kid from Ohio State, and we've had a lot of luck with Ohio State players. Able to coach him up when they get here, and they really seem to contribute fairly early. So KJ Hill's raw. I don't know if I want a raw guy at my number 2 right now, but you know, you do have to pick the best player. Our obligation isn't just to next year; it's to the program, the organization. Yeah. Michael Pittman, a good-sized guy from USC, is another guy you want to keep an eye on as well. And he's not a senior. Don't count out Justin Jefferson if he lasts long enough. The Saints might take a flyer on him. Not a flyer, grab him. And lastly, we talked about the defensive back position. I think they like Janoris Jenkins. I don't know if they know Janoris Jenkins. Yeah. I think Eli Apple's going to be free to go test the market. If we don't get a guy and he's there, maybe they make a last-minute deal. I don't know, 1-year contract. I think they're going to try and keep Janoris. Actually, Janoris Jenkins is still under contract. So I think he has another year left. So I think the Saints are going to try and bring him back. Christian Fulton.
It's a little expensive, but I think you're right. I think he's got a pretty good hit,
And Christian Fulton has a first-round grade. Some of the mocks have him going in the 14-15 area. Others have him fall later first round. I don't know if the Saints would again, it depends on what happens with the other guys. I don't know if they're going to throw a first-round pick on a corner, but if Fulton's there, I wouldn't be shocked if they did. Yeah. And another LSU guy who was preseason the top 10 pick, nicked up a little bit, ended up winning the Thorpe Award. I thought his junior year was even better than this year because he could have won it twice. So maybe that was kind of hey, we missed on you last year. Here this year, Grant Delpit, his grade or his projected spot now has fallen into the teens, maybe late first round, just because so many offensive players have slid up all the receivers. Right. If the Saints have a crack at Grant Delpit, I think they'd be nuts to pass on him. So I think Marcus Williams' days here are over. I hope they are, but I think he's not going to get much better in this system, and I think it's time that we go separate ways with him. So I think the Saints will be looking for a safety. Not a ton on the roster at the Senior Bowl right now, but I'll be looking out there, Craig, and we'll do a little report from it. And we'll put it up on the website. So
sounds good. I want to cycle back to the one thing we talked about. We talked about finding some pass rushers, maybe even some situational guys who don't have to play a lot, but just in obvious passing situations. Maybe a veteran. We referenced Okafor a couple of years ago. Sure. Had a good year for us. And something I saw in the playoffs last week that really demonstrated that. Saints have lost the last 6 playoff exits by 1 score or less, okay?
Yeah.
In 5 of those 6 games, a defensive stop probably wins that game for us. The Alex Smith touchdown, of course, the beast mode game against Seattle, the Minnesota Miracle, the Rams Nola no call, and then this year in overtime. Any of those games we make a defensive stop, we probably win that game.
In the San Francisco game during the regular season.
Yeah, so look at what Green Bay did last week. Green Bay went out. Ted Thompson was always averse to picking up free agents, like to build through the draft, but they got a new GM, a younger guy in there, brought on these Smith guys last year. Preston Smith and Darius Smith. They call them the Smith brothers, right?
Right.
Late in that game, they're on their heels defensively. They blew a 21-3 lead. They were only leading 28-23. It's 3rd and 5, Seattle, with about 4 minutes left in that game. And the guy, Preston Smith, comes around. They're trying to block him with a tight end. He nails Russell Wilson, drops him for a loss. 4th and 11. Now, Pete Carroll says after the ball game, if it's 4th and 5 or 6, we're going for it. 4th and 11, we couldn't take a chance. The odds aren't with you. They kicked the ball away. Aaron Rodgers placed keep away, and that's it. Ball game.
There you go.
How much did that signing mean to them in the offseason? When you can get a guy who brings you from one round to the next in the playoffs, how important was that? That guy justified his salary for that year in that one play by getting them to the next round. So I would be, again, I think we'll probably do it through free agency, but we need some situational pass rusher guys because we need to be able to make stops when it's crunch time. Otherwise, we're going to be playing these toss-up games, and it's going to be hard to win consecutive games in the playoffs.
Very, very well said. You go back to even the Bobby McCray thing coming off the bench in 2009.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Okafor with Marcus Davenport and Cameron Jordan. Marcus Davenport really started to come into his own last year. We still had out Okafor, and then he got hurt. Davenport did,
right.
And so you never had that elite guy off the edge, well rested,
right.
coming in the fourth quarter. Who's only played 15 or 20 plays that game, and it's a whole new element for that offensive tackle, or in that case, the tight end with Seattle to try and block, and it can flip a field, it can flip a field goal to a punt. Or first down.
A sack strip or something. Never know. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that does happen. Ask
right.
Daniil Hunter.
That's right. Yeah. Looking to the NFL, of course, last week had some good games. San Francisco trounced Minnesota. Really big defensive effort there. Green Bay holds on, as we mentioned, against Seattle. Kansas City, Houston, what a wild one. One of the great comebacks of all time. A defining moment for Patrick Mahomes and company.
Wow.
And a defining moment for a bad coaching moves on the Houston side. We won't get into the details there. But in Tennessee, Baltimore, what a crazy ball game that was. Tennessee really on the roll. Wouldn't put it past them that they could come and pull an upset again this week. But let's give our prediction.
Andy Reid is 1-8 in his career against the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, don't forget that. Yeah, still a lot to prove, even though he's a winning coach at 2 different programs. Last week, the Italian sports guys both 3-1 against the spread in the playoffs. So
undefeated.
We had that push in the Green Bay game. But looking ahead this week, Green Bay at San Francisco, Kyle, 7.5 favorite. San Francisco, of course. Green Bay going on the road. They got tattooed early in the year. Rodgers had, I think, less than 100 yards passing in that game. Really out-physicaled. Could be a different game. They haven't lost since that San Francisco game. How do you see this one playing out?
Green Bay's going to keep it real close. I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be surprised, not shocked, if Green Bay pulls the upset there. San Francisco is hell on wheels right now, but Green Bay's playing with house money. Nobody is expecting them to go up there and do a whole lot. And I think the pressure kind of, in a weird way, shifts to the home team here.
Okay. You're going to go with...
I'm going to take Green Bay in the points. Green Bay plus 7.5.
Okay, I think it's going to be close too, but I still do see San Francisco pulling it out late, maybe a late touchdown and 10 or 11 point win. So I'm going to go with San Francisco. I think Green Bay's got to think it's one shot. I think they need to really keep this a low-scoring game, and I think they need to hit some big plays over the top. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're going to move the ball. They're not going to run the ball as consistently well against this team as they have against others. And moving to the Tennessee at Kansas City. Kansas City is a 7-point favorite here. Again, it's a hard game to read. I mean, two really contrasting styles. Tennessee is a kind of a team with a philosophy that really travels well. Really good defense in a running game. 180 yards plus for Derrick Henry, 3 consecutive games. Incredible.
And Steve Tannehill in 2 playoffs games has not thrown for 100 yards yet.
His brother Ryan.
Both of them. Steve Tannehill was a South Carolina quarterback back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Wow. Ryan Tannehill has not thrown for 100 yards in either game. So I'm going back and forth on this one, like you said. Andy Reid is 1-8, like I said, in his career against the Titans. He's never been great in these huge games.
Yeah.
But they played their butts off offensively against the Patriots last year and almost pulled it off. A close call at the end and an offside call that really cost them that game. I think they get it done. It's hard for me to pick against the Titans right now because I love what they're doing. Mike Vrabel has them going.
Yeah.
But I think if you questioned anything about Kansas City in big games and how they respond to getting punched in the mouth, they got kicked in the teeth were down 21-0 and rolled by Houston the rest of the game like they were sitting still.
Yeah.
And put 51 points on the board. I think they continue to roll. In a close one, I'm going to take Kansas City out, but I'll go with Tennessee in the points.
Okay.
I do. I think Derrick Henry's going to slow that game down. They're going to try and play keep away from the Chiefs as best they can, and I think that's going to make it a closer ball game. 24-20, Kansas City.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to go with Kansas City. I think they're going to cover. Again, it's tough to bet against Tennessee the way they're playing. You mentioned Tannehill, less than 100 yards.
Both of them.
Yeah, right. Less than 100 yards and a touchdown in each of those games with a win. First guy to do that consecutive games in the playoffs since Terry Bradshaw did it. So pretty impressive. Mike Vrabel, you talk about a team that really takes on the personality of their coach, a real great demonstration here. But Kansas City, what was really impressed me last week was they never really got much of a run. They were one-dimensional, last week against this team and still managed to come back. That's how good Mahomes is. I think with Mahomes, you don't think of him as a running quarterback that you got to keep pending, like you do with, like with Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. But I think you've got to keep him penned in. Even though he can beat you from the pocket, he's deadly outside the pocket.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So they've got to keep him penned in and not let him start scrambling. When he gets loose and out wide, he's tough to stop. He's got such a good arm and good instincts throwing on the run. So, but I'm going to go with Kansas City. I think they've got enough firepower. I think if you can get Tennessee in a deficit situation, which you haven't really been in.
You make them press and have to throw. And they might do that. They're going to crowd the line of scrimmage and make them throw it and see what happens.
Kansas City can't get behind 24-0 to this team. I'll tell you that.
Right.
That's pretty much a given. All right, folks, that wraps us up for the Italian sports guys this week. We'll have more in the offseason. Again, we'll talk about draft when we get closer to that time, free agency. And
next week's report from the Senior Bowl as well?
Next week's report from the Senior Bowl, of course, and then we'll come back after the Super Bowl and have some wrap-up shows there as well.
Something I want to mention real quick, too, talking about Louisiana football, and, of course, that's on the forefront across the country with what LSU did. But all Louisiana teams were undefeated in their bowl games this year. LSU won the Chick-fil-A Bowl. The Peach Bowl, excuse me. Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and then, of course, the national championship. ULL won, Tulane won. La Tech won. And then in the FCS division, Southeastern and Nichols won the opening rounds of their playoffs. Right. They both eventually lost, but what a great time for all this. And I'll see my old buddy Coach Frank Selfo. I'm sure will be up in Mobile this week. Southeastern just extended him through the 2024 season. That's
great. And it's great for recruiting too. You talk about LSU with this win really locking down the borders of Louisiana. I mean, all that talent we saw exiting the state so many years, with all these teams doing well, they'll find a place to land in Louisiana, of course. One
more thing.
Yeah.
Great point on the recruiting. Speaking of recruiting, former LSU running backs coach and University of Texas San Antonio coach Frank Wilson, New Orleans native, just got hired as the head coach at McNeese State. I know some other names were being bantered around for that. I know the school had some interest in Garrett Sasher, another New Orleans native, friend of the program here. He's coaching at Western Kentucky running backs right now. I don't know if that interest was mutual, but I did hear his name dropped in the hat too over there. So, but kudos to Frank Wilson for getting another shot at a head coaching job. It didn't end well for him at UT San Antonio. Let's see if he can get it done in Lake Charles.
Okay, well, an exciting 2019 season and a lot to look forward to in 2020. And, of course, we'll be on top of that. I want to thank once again our sponsors, Luca Eats and Brian Checks and State Farm. We are
the Italian Sports Guys.
Bada boom.
Bada bing.